Okay, that's Fort Lauderdale. That's sort of average-sized boats, everyday weekenders for Fort Lauderdale now. Rather large, conspicuous, and we had some work done on the engine. Very good quality work there, done surprisingly expensive. And the whole time we were in the US, which is a lot of this last year since we were here, we never got checked once by customs, but we did actually, not customs, Coast Guard. We did actually, they went past, we saw them checking on other boats, but we were running AIS all the time, which is transmitting our identity and who we were, and I'm quite sure they just looked it up and saw that we were okay, and so they let us get on with our thing and left us well alone, which was pretty good. Okay. Now, some of you may remember some years ago McMullen and Wing built a lovely little brigantine called Fritha, and we had moved on from Florida here, and we were in Charleston, which is about halfway up the side of the United States. And Fritha, I saw Fritha there, and I thought, some of the folks back home may like to know where she is, and she is in beautiful condition, tied up there at the marina. Yep. Yes, well, it's sort of bean rock, a screw pile lighthouse. They call them that because they put these they screw these pillars into the rock, and then they build the lighthouse on top. This is in the Chesapeake Bay, and we went through there because we wanted to take the boat back there and store it there while we came home here later in the year. And once again, with good advice, we went to a very good boatyard there. But that's a typical Chesapeake Bay lighthouse, and some of them actually got washed away during storms, and they've had quite a few storms through there. Not too many in the last very recent times, but earlier on they had some pretty severe storms through the Chesapeake. Okay. More on the Chesapeake later. Now, some of you may remember late last year there was a hurricane called Hurricane Sandy that devastated New York. And we've moved on again further north, and we're right up New York now, and up here there's this is the side of the United States. Chesapeake Bay's down here, and Long Island. This is Long Island, and New York City is here. We're now up in the southern end of Long Island. Now, the whole of this New Jersey coast, all the way right up to here, it was devastated by Hurricane Sandy, by the storm surge. In New York, there were nearly 200 people killed. 65,000 boats were wrecked. They had the whole of the subway in New York flooded. There's about 6 levels. It's just the same size as London's subway. And it just washed everything away. And we were there 6 months later, and we just couldn't believe the devastation that was still there. There was debris piled up in all sorts of places. There were keel boats just sitting on the side of the, just sitting up there where they'd been wrecked and abandoned. And this is in a fairly Ivy League area called Larchmont, where we had friends, and we based ourselves at the yacht club there for 10 days. But Hurricane Sandy had actually scoured out everything from this line here, from where Karin's sitting, right round here, come right up to the houses. Now, we were looking down 15, 18 feet above sea level, and some of the houses in this row here had 9 feet of water inside them. So, and this was inside Long Island Sound in a sheltered bay. Yeah, and not on the coast. Incredible how much devastation came there. And you know, we're members of the Yacht Squadron, and also more recently Royal Cruising Club, and it was absolutely great because it gained entry to many clubs. And anybody going cruising, I'd suggest that you actually belong to some good clubs, because you get lots of help from other club members, reciprocal rights, all that sort of thing, and people look after you. And we were very fortunate. We were hosted to a degree from here, from various places, right through the Caribbean and up in America and Canada, by the Cruising Club of America people, as well as the Royal Cruising Club. And in fact, the CCA Commodore, when he heard it, we were there, he said, "Oh, come up to my place. I'm up at Narragansett Bay. Stay with us, and I'll lend you all the charts and all the guides you need for your trip," which was up through America and right down through St. Lawrence River. And so we went up to a nice little place in Wickford and borrowed all that stuff from him. So it really is worthwhile belonging to a good yacht club if you're cruising. Well, that's worth a try. New York, we were in New York. My niece had joined us actually, and it's an easy place to get lost in. I think I was taking photographs, and when you actually have a map that says Fifth Avenue and you look up and you think, it says Madison Street. No. And it's a little bit confusing at first. They have two names for most places, and so once you get used to that, it's okay. Yeah. New York skyline, we're heading up the Hudson River here, and I'll hold up another chart in a minute. And over here is the World Trade Center. That was where they had two big buildings when we were there 20 years ago, and of course after 9/11. But they have got this one back up again. That's World Trade Center, the first tower that they built there. And of course inside there's a very tasteful, really nice memorial where the buildings were, and it is well worth a visit. It's very well done indeed, and they're getting those buildings back up again. And that's actually a very nice looking building. That it looks good. One of the things that we really learned about 9/11 that was sort of a bit mind-blowing was about 3,000 people killed. 1,200 of them were rescue workers. So that's food for thought. Now, it's not a medieval castle. It's West Point Academy on the shores of the Hudson River. And down here, you can't quite read it, but it says West Point Sailing Club. So they're actually trying to make sailors out of soldiers. I don't know how successful they are with some of them. They probably get a bit seasick. But in any case, that's West Point, and that's the main, or the only real academy for soldiers. Then they've got the Air Force one, which we actually went past up in Colorado near Denver, and then of course Annapolis has the naval one, and that's on our list of things to do when we get back. We've got the mast down. We're now up the Hudson, about 200 odd miles up the Hudson from New York City, and we had to get the mast down to go under some of the bridges, and we had only about 6-9 inches clearance under the bridges, and further on we had very little under the keel as well. And as we came up here, there was some rain up in the mountains, and it brought a lot of debris down the river, so we knew that there'd been a lot of rain up there, and we were doing a sort of a slalom course up the river, trying to avoid all the rain. But what we wanted to do was get up to the Erie Canal. Yes. Now, thanks there. We'll hold it up so there's a bit of light on it. Now here's New York here. Okay. Bit more to the right? Oh, okay. That better? Okay. I can't tell from here. But New York is here, and we came up the Hudson River, all the way up here, and you eventually get up to Albany here, which is the capital of New York State. Just past there, the Erie Canal starts, and it follows the Mohawk River, and it actually runs all the way right across here to just near Niagara Falls. And that was the main waterway since about 1825, and it actually opened up the United States. This was the way west that they could actually carry stuff. It was only in about 1960, when the St. Lawrence Seaway opened up here, that they really stopped using the Erie Canal as a main means of water transport. Now, and it comes right across here. Now, our plan was to come up to here, work through the Erie Canal, come through to about here, and then work our way down to Lake Ontario and over to Kingston here, where we'd visited before. We really liked this area. And there's 1,000 islands around here, and then we would head on down the St. Lawrence. So that's just that was just the plan. However, Mother Nature had something else to say about it. We'll get that one in a minute. And Mother Nature had something to say, because the rain that had fallen had damaged some of the lock gates in the Erie Canal, and they actually have to control the river with these big gates that they put down to control the river flow, as well as the while you're going through the locks. And that was damaged, so the Erie Canal was closed. So we spent the first 10 days in Albany. Anybody ever spent 10 days in Albany? Well, yeah. Well, in any case, or Auckland, yes. It wasn't the most wonderful place to spend 10 days, but the yacht club, they were very nice, and we hired a car and went drive about and that sort of thing. And so they said, well, it's just about to open, so we got all excited. And thanks, Basil. That's Albany from up on top of a hill, and here we are, anchored over here. Believe it or not, another Kiwi boat, a launch that some friends of ours, or some people who became our friends, had bought and in Florida, and they were doing the same trip as us. And it was actually fortunate, because it was basically free to anchor in the river, but typical New York prices, you know, $150 a day to stay in the marine, but they didn't have enough room for us, so we were happy to anchor, stayed there. And this is the Hudson coming up here. Thank you. Yep, anchored there. We had a couple of anchors out. The current ran strongly, and it was a bit tidal as well. Just as the 10 days was up and they said, it's opening tomorrow, they turned around and said, there's been more rain, we'll just delay it for a day. And next thing we heard that there'd been some more damage, and it wouldn't be opening for another week or so. And so we thought, yes, thank you. And then we talked to some of the lock keepers, and they said, we've seen this before, and the damage, it's not going to be opening for 3 or 4 weeks. So here we were up the creek without a paddle, especially since we had friends flying in from Colorado to join us in Kingston in Canada. So we diverted them to Albany to see us, and yeah, I'll have a look at this now. Yeah, so we came north up here, and this was instead of coming across to here, we actually had to come up through here. They told us you won't get through this part here in Canada because the Chambly Canal is too shallow for you. We'd heard that story before, and so we decided to try it anyway, which was quite fortunate. And then from there, ultimately, we went down the St. Lawrence River to various places, up one of these side rivers here, and then down around this peninsula that sticks out here, down around here, and then south down to Prince Edward Island. So that's just a little bit of geographic background. Sorry. Now, yep, that's the original Erie Canal, built in 1825. That's the, you can see the amount of water that was coming down there, and the whole place was flooded. But that was the first canal that they put through. It was cost a couple of $1 million way back then, but it had paid for itself inside 5 years. That's how important it was. So it goes 400 miles, the whole thing altogether. Right. We went around in a car. We went up to Lake George. They had some wonderful old Chris Craft there, beautiful boats, and a company called Halls restore them, and just some really nice, tidy boats over in the States that are just beautifully looked after, which was much enjoyable. Very stylish. Thanks. As I said, we went further north into a place called Lake Champlain. Went through a number of locks, about 10 up locks and about 3 down locks, and ended up in this lake. The last down lock was a place called Whitehall, and it's seen better days. It was supposed to be the home of the start of the American Navy, where they actually built the first ships for America, which was before she was independent, and it was for Benedict Arnold's little navy, where he was skirmishing on Lake Champlain with the British who were coming down from Canada. And Benedict Arnold, of course, became a little bit more famous when he decided to change sides sometime later and became the great American traitor. So in any case, Lake Champlain was absolutely lovely, but at Whitehall, we had, the current was flowing pretty fast and we were tied up, and we called up the lock keeper on the radio and said, hey, we want to come through the lock down into the lake. And she said, yep, sure, I'll open the gates for you now so you can get underway. Well, we sort of started getting underway, and we had about 2 knots of stream carrying us forward. So I slowed down, held back. We had our guests on board by now, of course, as well. Slowed down as much as we could, and the lock gates were open. They stayed open, and the red light was on. When there's a red light on, you're not allowed to enter. So we were sort of holding back, trying to hold back against the 2 knot, getting up towards 2.5 knot current. And here was the lock over here, and there was this big stone wall out in the middle. The other side was about 3 or 4 times as wide, and that was a waterfall. So we're going along like this, going harder and harder astern. And of course, if you get used to the idea that you're going down a stream like that and you go astern, you end up with a big sheer and the boat yaws all over the place, and it's quite hard to control. And it was getting harder and harder and harder to control. And the light stayed red, and eventually somebody said, well, she's waving a radio in the air. So we spoke to her, and she said, oh yes, I wanted to tell you there's a very strong current. Thank you, we had noticed. Why is the light red? Oh, she said, I'll turn on the green one. Well, at this stage, we were within half a boat length of being swept sideways onto this stone wall, and that wasn't very nice at all. And so in any case, we booted it and managed to get around, missed the stone wall by less than a metre. And then we were across the top of the waterfall, which was only about 2 or 3 boat lengths off to one side. And pouring on the power as much as we could in full helm, we managed to get across there. Absolutely no soundings, no idea of what was in there, and managed to get back up the river again and turned around and came back, and we were sort of... And she was bright and breezy and saying, isn't it a nice day? Thank you.